Thank you for joining me on the things that bother me. There are things people deal with every day, things that are real, constant, and right in front of us. But nobody really says them out loud, not because they do not matter, but because people have gotten used to carrying them. This is the things that bother me. Up to this point, we have been laying it out piece by piece. Episode 1 was about the promise, being told you could be anything if you just followed the path. Episode 2 showed what that looked like in reality. Coming home to empty houses, learning early that you were on your own. Episode 3 moved into adulthood, where doing everything right did not lead where it was supposed to. Episode 4 exposed the gamble. The idea that college was the safe path, only to find out it came with risk, debt, and no guarantees. And now all of that leads here. Today's episode is not about one problem. It is about what happens when everything stacks on top of each other. Generation X is not just dealing with pressure. They are carrying it from every direction at the same time. Parents who need help. Adult kids who still need support. Work that does not slow down. Costs that do not stop climbing. And through all of it, one expectation never changes. Keep going. This is episode 5. The Squeeze Generation. Generation X, episode 5. The Squeeze Generation. There is a generation standing in the middle of everything, and most people never stop long enough to really see what that means. From the outside, it looks like they're managing. It looks like they're handling life the way they always have, quietly, steadily, without drawing attention. But that surface view is misleading. What you are really seeing is not balance. It is not stability. It is pressure being absorbed and managed every single day from multiple directions at once, without pause. Generation X was raised with a very specific expectation about how life worked. You handle your responsibilities. You stay consistent. You work hard. And over time, that effort builds something you can stand on. Not perfect, not easy, but stable. That belief shaped how they approached everything. They adapted. They figured things out. They became reliable. But what they stepped into as adults was not the same structure they were prepared for. The ground shifted. Costs increased. Stability became harder to maintain. And the expectations placed on them did not decrease, they expanded. Now they are positioned in a place where everything converges. They are not at the beginning of life, where mistakes are expected and supported. They are not at the end, where responsibilities begin to ease. They are in the middle, where demands from every direction meet at the same time. Parents need help. Children need support. Work demands consistency. Financial pressure never lets up. And through all of it, the expectation remains unchanged. Keep going. This is not a story about failure. This is a story about accumulation. This is Generation X. This is the Squeeze Generation. Section 1, the position in the middle. Generation X occupies a position that is structurally demanding in ways that are not always obvious at first glance. Being in the middle is often described as a stage of life, but in reality, it is more like a pressure point. It is where responsibilities from different directions meet, overlap, and do not resolve themselves. There is no transition from one role to another. Instead, all roles remain active at the same time. This position is not temporary in the way people assume. It does not come with a clear beginning or end. It stretches out, often longer than expected, because the factors that create it do not move in sync. Parents age at their own pace. Children grow into adulthood in an unpredictable environment. Careers reach their most demanding stage. And all of these timelines collide in the same window of life. The result is not balance, it is constant adjustment. It is the need to shift attention, resources, and energy from one demand to another without ever fully resolving any of them. The middle is not a place of stability. It is a place of continuous pressure. Section 2, responsibility from the past. On one side of this pressure is the past, represented by aging parents whose needs are increasing over time. Health changes, mobility becomes limited, and independence begins to fade. The roles reverse slowly at first, then more noticeably. The people who once provided support now require it. But this shift is not always simple or emotionally neutral. Not all relationships were built on equal support. Some parents had the ability to help when it mattered and chose not to, or believed that independence meant doing everything alone. Now, as time progresses, the expectation changes. Support is needed and Generation X is expected to provide it, regardless of what came before. This creates a tension that often goes unspoken. There is responsibility, but there is also memory. There is obligation, but also imbalance. And yet, despite that tension, Generation X steps in. Because the situation requires it. Because walking away is not something they were conditioned to do. Section 3: Responsibility to the future. At the same time, there is the future, represented by children navigating a world that is more complex and more expensive than ever before. The cost of living has increased. The path to stability is less predictable. Opportunities exist, but they are layered with new challenges and uncertainties. Generation X sees this clearly. They understand that the environment their children are entering is not the same one they entered. And because of that, they remain involved longer. They provide support longer. Financially, emotionally, and practically. Because stepping back is not realistic when the difficulty is visible. This extended support requires resources that are already limited. Time, energy, and money are stretched further than expected. And while previous generations may have been able to step away at a certain point, Generation X often cannot. The responsibility continues and it expands. Section 4: The collision of demands. What defines the squeezed generation is not just the presence of multiple responsibilities, but the fact that they occur simultaneously. There is no sequence. There is no order in which one demand finishes before another begins. Everything happens at once, and it keeps happening. Work demands do not decrease when family needs increase. Financial pressure does not ease when time becomes limited. Personal responsibilities do not pause when external obligations grow. Instead, everything stacks on top of everything else, creating a constant state of overlap. Managing this collision requires continuous adjustment. Decisions have to be made quickly, often without full information, and always with trade-offs. There is no perfect solution, only the best possible option in the moment. And even that comes with consequences. Section 5: The financial strain. Financial pressure is not a single event, it is a constant presence. It exists across multiple areas at the same time. Housing, healthcare, education, daily living expenses, all of them increase, often unpredictably. At the same time, responsibilities expand to include supporting parents and children simultaneously. There is no single expense that creates the strain. It is the accumulation of all of them happening together without pause. Income may remain stable, but costs do not. And the gap between the two becomes harder to manage over time. This creates a situation where financial decisions are no longer about growth or planning. They become about maintenance and survival, about keeping everything functioning without letting anything fall behind. And that requires constant attention. Section 6: Time disappears first. Before anything else runs out, time does. It disappears gradually, in small increments that are easy to overlook at first. One responsibility added here. One obligation extended there. And over time, those increments accumulate until there is no space left. Time that was once available for rest, reflection, or personal interests becomes occupied by tasks that cannot be avoided. Every day becomes structured around what needs to be done, not what could be done. Personal time becomes secondary, then optional, then non-existent. Without time, there is no recovery, no reset, just continuation. And that has a cumulative effect that is not immediately visible, but deeply felt over time. Section 7: The expectation of self-reliance. Generation X was shaped by independence. They learned early to solve problems, to adapt, and to move forward without waiting for help. That independence became one of their defining strengths. It allowed them to navigate uncertainty and handle situations that required resilience. But over time, that strength became an expectation. When you are the one who always figures things out, people stop asking if you need help. Systems stop offering support. It becomes assumed that you will manage, no matter what is placed in front of you. Eventually, independence stops being a choice. It becomes a requirement. And that requirement adds another layer of pressure because it removes the possibility of relief. Section 8, the invisible role. Much of what Generation X does is not visible in a way that can be easily measured. It does not produce a single outcome that can be pointed to and recognized. Instead, it produces continuity. It keeps things functioning. It prevents breakdowns before they happen. Because of that, it often goes unnoticed. The absence of problems becomes the expectation, not the achievement. If everything is working, it is assumed that it should be working. The effort required to maintain that state is rarely acknowledged. This invisibility adds to the pressure, because it means that the work continues, but the recognition does not. And over time, that imbalance becomes another weight to carry. Section 9, the identity shift. As responsibilities accumulate, something else begins to change identity. The person you were before these responsibilities took over becomes harder to recognize. Roles begin to define you more than individuality. Caregiver, provider, problem solver. These roles are necessary, but they are also consuming. They take up space that was once occupied by personal interests, goals, and a sense of self that existed outside of responsibility. And over time, that space does not return. This leads to a quiet but persistent question. Not asked out loud, but felt internally. What happened to me? Not as a complaint, but as a realization that something has shifted in a way that is difficult to reverse. Section 10, the point of exhaustion. There is no single moment where exhaustion begins. It builds gradually over time as pressure continues without interruption. Energy decreases. Recovery takes longer. The ability to absorb new demands becomes more limited. But the expectations do not change. Responsibilities do not decrease because energy does. They remain constant, regardless of how much capacity is left. And that creates a disconnect between what is required and what is available. Exhaustion does not remove responsibility. It only makes carrying it more difficult. And that creates a cycle where effort increases, but relief does not. Section 11, the system does not balance itself. There is a common assumption that things will eventually even out, that the pressure will shift, that the responsibilities will balance over time. But systems do not correct themselves automatically. They continue in the direction they are already moving. If responsibility continues to flow outward without support returning, imbalance grows. And that imbalance becomes the new normal. Generation X is living within that structure, where the expectation to provide remains constant, but the return support does not match it. This is not a temporary condition. It is a structural issue. And until that structure changes, the pressure remains. Section 12, still standing. Generation X is still standing. That part is true. But standing is not the same as stability. It is not the same as balance. It is endurance. It is the result of continuing forward because there is no alternative. They have absorbed pressure from multiple directions and continued to function despite it. They have adapted, adjusted, and managed what was in front of them, even when it was difficult. But endurance has a cost. And that cost is not always visible. It is not always acknowledged. But it is there in the accumulation of everything that has been carried over time. In closing, Generation X is not asking for recognition in the way people might expect. They are not asking for attention or validation. What they're experiencing is not something that fits into simple narratives or quick explanations. It is not one issue. It is all of them layered together, happening at the same time. They continue to carry what is placed in front of them because that is what they have always done. They manage. They adapt. They hold things together. But that does not mean it is sustainable. It does not mean it is balanced. And it does not mean it should continue without change. Because pressure does not disappear when it is managed. It accumulates. And when a generation is placed in the center of everything, expected to support upward, support downward, maintain stability, and continue without pause, something eventually has to give. This is not about weakness. It is about limits. And every system has them. This is Generation X. This is the squeeze generation. Generation X is still standing. But that does not mean things are working. It means they have been carrying more than they were ever supposed to, for longer than anyone expected. without the kind of support that was supposed to be there, holding things together, stepping in when something breaks, filling gaps that never should have existed in the first place, again and again. And the problem is not that they can handle it. The problem is that they're expected to, every time, without pause, without relief, without anything coming back the other way. Because pressure does not go away just because someone is strong enough to carry it. It builds. And at some point, something has to change. If this is something you see, or something you have lived, then you already know this is real. And it is not just happening in one place. It is everywhere. This is the things that bother me. If this episode hit home, like, comment, share, and subscribe below. This is The Things That Bother Me. Until next time.